My island and the one across the gap have shared one tether since before either of our grandparents were born. A living vine, bridge thick as a ship's mast at its root, tended every single day on both sides, or the islands drift, slow and silent, until the gap passes a point no bridge can ever cross again. I have been my island's tender for 3 years. I check the vine every morning the way you check a wound for infection, because that is exactly what it is. We keep the old measuring stones at the cliff edge, a line scored fresh each season, and you can watch, if you're patient and unlucky, the gap between this year's line and last year's grow a hand's width wider every count. 3 years ago, it was nothing. This year, it is enough that I have started waking in the night to check it, as though staring hard enough might will it shut. I wake before the light most mornings and go straight to the tending shed for my grandfather's old pruning hook. A small, curved garden tool, worn smooth at the handle from 3 generations of hands, nothing sharp enough to call a weapon, just patient enough to matter. I wind the coil rope over one shoulder, tuck a strip of feeding paste into my belt pouch, and walk out to where the vine roots into the cliff face like something alive and breathing, because it is. The tending songs are older than any of us, half craft, half lullaby, and I sing the root song under my breath, the whole walk out, the way my grandfather taught me before his hands got too unsteady for the work. Callan Rook tends the other end, and for 3 years we have met in the middle of that vine most mornings, and for 3 years we have disagreed about nearly everything. He does not fight the drift the way I do. He has spent this whole past season, by his own admission, teaching his people how to grieve a loss that hasn't finished happening yet, so that when it does, it doesn't break them the way it broke communities elsewhere in the archipelago who held on to false hope too long. You're preparing them to lose something you haven't actually lost yet. I told him, this same morning, kneeling at the root to check the graft I'd fed it the week before.
You're refusing to accept something the whole archipelago's history says is already decided.
He answered, not unkindly, crouched on his side doing the same patient work I was doing on mine. We have had some version of this argument perhaps 40 times. Neither of us has ever once won it. The tether at mid-span is wide enough for 2 people to work comfortably and no wider. Thick knotted vine cable, flowering white where it's healthy and thinning to a papery brown where it isn't, the whole structure swaying gently under our weight, while cloud sea stretches in every direction below us, close enough to the surface some mornings that mist beads on my eyelashes before the sun burns it off. I have spent 3 years learning every inch of this bridge, the way you learn a person, which stones on my side hold heat longest, which knots in the vine need retying every 3rd week without fail, and, though I would not have admitted this even to myself a year ago. Exactly how Callan Rook's voice sounds different out here than it does anywhere else, unguarded in a way his own island's council chamber never gets to hear. What I don't say, what I have never once said to him in 3 years of mornings, is how aware I am of the specific warmth of him across a bridge barely wide enough for 2 people to pass without their shoulders brushing. He works with his sleeves pushed to the elbow, forearms roped with the particular strength this craft builds, and there is a stillness to him even mid-argument that makes me want to close the distance between us and see what happens to that calm if I actually touched it. And yet, I look forward to those mornings more than I have ever admitted to my own reflection, let alone to him. Callan is careful and calm in a way that should annoy me, and somehow only ever steadies me instead. And some mornings, we finish the tending and simply sit at the bridge's center a while, saying nothing, watching the cloud sea shift gold underneath us, close enough that if I leaned 2 inches sideways, my shoulder would rest against his, and it is the best hour of whatever day surrounds it. I told Marin about the 2-inch thought-over breakfast, the way I tell her everything, sitting on the low garden wall behind her cottage with the bread still warm between us. She went very quiet in the particular way she does when a subject brushes too close to something of her own. "You should lean the 2 inches," said finally, not quite looking at me, tracing a groove in the table with one finger. "Life's short enough on a drifting island without doing the math on 2 inches." Marin has been my closest friend since we were girls, sneaking out to watch the sunrise from the wrong side of the tending fence. And lately there's a carefulness in her, when Callan's name comes up, that I've been too distracted to properly examine. A small flinch, quickly smoothed over. The kind you only notice in someone you've known since before either of you learned to hide anything. "You always do that," I said, catching her hand mid-groove. "Go somewhere else in your face when I talk about him. What is it?" She smiled, the smile she uses when she's decided a thing isn't worth saying yet, and shook her head. "Nothing worth interrupting your 2 inches over," she said, and squeezed my fingers before I could push further, and I let it go, the way you let go of things with someone you trust, completely, telling myself there would be time later to ask again properly. "How wide was it, this count?" Callan asked me, "this particular morning," nodding at the measuring stones behind me. I told him the truth, because we have never once lied to each other about the numbers, even when we lie to ourselves about everything else. "Wider than last season's average, wider than I want to say out loud." He was quiet a moment.
Mine shows the same. "Now,"
He said.
Sorren, I think this might be the season it stops being slow.
I didn't answer right away. Instead, I did something I have never once done in 3 years. I closed the 2 inches myself, sat down beside him at the bridge's center, close enough that my shoulder pressed warm against his, and felt him go very still. The particular stillness of a man deliberately not reacting to something he badly wants to react to. "If it's not slow anymore," I said quietly, "I don't want to spend whatever's left of it arguing with you from opposite ends of a bridge." He turned his head, and for the first time in 3 years, I watched Callan Rook's famous calm actually crack, not into fear, into something warmer and more dangerous, his eyes dropping briefly to my mouth before he caught himself and looked back up, jaw tight with the effort of staying exactly where he was, instead of closing the last handful of inches between us.
"Sorren,
He said, low,
if you keep sitting this close to me while telling me the numbers are getting worse, I'm going to stop being careful, and I don't think either of us is ready for what happens after that."
I didn't move away. I want to be honest about that. I looked at this man I have argued with and looked forward to seeing for 3 straight years, close enough now to count the small scar through one eyebrow. I'd never been near enough to notice before, and for the first time in all of it, I saw something in his careful, accepting calm that looked unmistakably like fear standing right alongside the wanting. Maybe I don't want to careful, I said. Neither of us moved for a long moment. Neither of us moved away either. Part 2, tomorrow.